Hello, my name is Dennis Campbell, and I'm the director of the Center for International Legal Studies. I've been asked to tell you a little bit about the Visiting Professors Program by which we send experienced lawyers to Eastern Europe and the former Soviet republics for teaching assignments. Now, I thought the best way to do that would be for me to refer to some slides along the way and discuss some of the information that is presented there. I suppose the first question that anyone would have would be, who is the Center for International Legal Studies? Who are we? Well, the center, as you can see on the slide, is a nonprofit organization that is established in Austria. And we've been running programs based here in Austria for approximately 40 years. We also have a sister corporation in Colorado. It's a 501c3 corporation, and it is registered as a charity in Colorado. We're an accredited continuing legal education provider for California, Texas, New York, England, and Wales, and we have observer status at the United Nations International Trade Law Commission. Now, the center does a lot of legal publishing. We work with the major law publishers in the United States, like LexisNexis, Westlaw, um, with publishers in the Netherlands, like Kluwer, with BNA, and with Bloomberg publishers. We also do a lot of continuing legal education programs. Those conferences that we hold are held in Austria, occasionally in Latin America, occasionally in Africa, occasionally in Iran, and in places such as St. Petersburg, Russia, and in Budapest, Hungary. We run two LLM programs. One of them is in conjunction with Lazarski University in Warsaw, and the other is in cooperation with Boston University in Boston, Massachusetts. We also operate a foreign direct investment MOOT program, which attracts between 90 and 100 law schools from throughout the world to competition which is held in the United States, in Europe, in India, and in Asia. And finally, for many years, we've operated an international internship program by which law students are able to work with law firms in various parts of the world. That's operated in conjunction with Suffolk University. And every year we have 30 or 40 American law students who work with law offices in Latin America and Asia, Australia, the Middle East, and throughout Europe. Well, I guess everyone needs friends, and the center does have a few, as we should after operating for about 40 years here. We have a close relationship with the Lazarski University, with whom we operate an LLM program. We have a very close relationship with Eötvös University in Budapest. We have LLM courses there. I teach in Budapest, and we have a lot of exchange activities with that university. We cooperate with King's College in London in the Moot Court program. We have our program with Boston University. We have the internship program with Suffolk University, and I do teach at Suffolk University every year in Boston. We also cooperate with Pepperdine University in California in conjunction with the Moot Court program. And finally, there are 51 universities in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet republics with which we have cooperation agreements and with whom we have exchange programs for visiting professors. We started this program for senior lawyers in 2005. When it started, our hope was that we might have as many as 12 or 15 people in the first year of the program. The fact was we had 50 in the first year. I remember when we started, we indicated that we wanted people who were over 45 years of age. And I was waiting for the very first application to come. And ultimately it did arrive, a package sent by FedEx from Chicago. The application was prepared by a lawyer in Chicago with a cover letter. And he pointed out that he'd only been practicing 3 years. He was only 28 years old. But he also said if we did not admit him to the program, he would sue us for age discrimination. Well, it was comforting to know that there were lawyers in America who were ever vigilant when it came to protecting at least their rights. I wouldn't go into the difficulty one would have of filing a lawsuit in Chicago against an Austrian nonprofit organization, and let alone enforcing it in Austria against practically no assets if you happen to win a judgment in Chicago. In any event, because of this young man, we changed the criteria. And we said, well, you don't have to be 45 years of age. You just have to have 15 years of practice experience. So the fact is that now, if you happen to be 17 years old and you've had 15 years of practice as a licensed lawyer, you can certainly apply for the program. Now, in these 8 years, we've appointed about 600 lawyers to teaching positions. And the words repeaters, repeaters, repeaters are vital to this program because we have so many people who come back and teach again and again and again, some as many as 7 times in the 8 years. And I think it signifies not only the value of the program to the host universities, but the value of the experience to the people who teach in the program. When we began filling positions in the program, we had so many repeaters, we were threatened with the possibility of squeezing out new applicants. So we set up a policy whereby the first 30, 40 positions every year were reserved for new people, and then we would notify repeaters what was still on the table that they might choose from. And the end result is every year there are 70 to 90 people who are teaching in the program. Now the question always comes up is why do we do this? Well, the fact of the matter is uh, the host universities in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet republics very badly want to have American law teachers, but they have no budget for it. There's a great interest in the American society, in the American way of doing business, in the American legal system, and in the American lawyer himself or herself. But they don't have funds to bring over Americans to teach. And we also know that American lawyers like to teach, but that adjunct professorships are difficult to come by in the United States. So the thought was that maybe these two interests could be brought together. And the fact is, over these 8 years, we've proven that there's a real connection between the host universities who want Americans and the Americans who want to have a teaching and cultural experience. So that's why we do it. And then the question is where we do it. Well, the orientation program, which is mandatory, it's the requirement before you teach, is held in Salzburg, Austria, and that is a picture of our venue headquarters in Austria. If you recognize the lake, it may be because you saw The Sound of Music, and that's where the children fell off the boat. The gazebo was the famous gazebo from the movie was to the left of the building, and a number of the scenes were filmed outside the building. The movie maker wanted to film inside the building, but was denied permission, and so he had a lot of pictures taken of the inside rooms and rebuilt those rooms in Hollywood. So the interiors match what you would find if you actually went into the building, but they were in fact shot in Hollywood. It is a wonderful venue. It's located about 15 minutes walk through the hillsides in the forest to the main part of Salzburg, and it's a very quiet, private setting. I suppose this slide would be better entitled not where we do it, but where you do it. And this map shows all of the countries where we have positions available. As it indicates, we go north to Estonia and south to Albania, and we cover the Czech Republic to the west and all of Russia and the former Soviet republics to the east. We go as far as Vladivostok and Siberia. I remember a couple of years ago, I had an American lawyer call me from New York, and he explained to me that he wanted to do the program because he, for many years, devoted his life to studying the history, geography, and the politics of Eastern Europe. And he wanted to know where and what countries we had positions available. And I told him, I said, well, if you look to the Baltic states to the north, you go south to the Adriatic, you go over to the Black Sea, you go up to the north to the Russian Federation, and basically everything in between. And he paused for a moment and he said, "So this means apparently you have no positions in Paris." Well, that question suggested to me that maybe he wasn't the expert that he thought he was on Eastern Europe. The fact of the matter is that he didn't apply, so we didn't have to worry about finding a position for him in Paris. But as you can see from the map, the geographic scope is broad, the opportunities are equally broad, and the countries that you see represented there are rich in history and culture and all hungry for the presence of Americans. So now we come to the question of how you do it. It's fairly simple. You review the materials that you can find on the website at www.seniorlawyersnet and at www.cils.org/sl/. There's lots of information there. The application form can be requested from our email. The email is shown on the slide. Or you can download it or complete it online at the Senior Lawyers Net website. If you get past the first round, you're selected for interview. And if you're admitted and then confirm that in fact you do want to participate, with that confirmation, we placed you in direct contact with your host university. All the host university knows is that you're willing to come for 2 or more weeks, that you want to teach in a particular subject area, that you want to be there in the fall or the spring of the coming year. And it's really then up to you to determine exactly what you teach, when you're going to be there, and how many hours a week you're going to teach. I always tell people the final decision as to how much you teach is yours, because it's all happening on your nickel. We do encourage the host universities to exploit you a little bit because, frankly, it enriches your experience. And oftentimes we have people who come and do their teaching assignments of perhaps 20 hours a week, but agree as well to give some guest lectures in other classes. We've had people speaking at the local chambers of commerce or to conventions that are in town, often with the benefit of having a translator with them when they're giving the speech to an audience, for example, of Russian engineers. When you are admitted to the program, you confirm that you want to do it. You receive a user ID and a password, and that is very useful for you in terms of finding out even more about your assignment and the program. So now you're in the program, and now you've come to Salzburg, Austria for orientation. The 4 pictures that you see there give you a sense of the surroundings within which you will study and live for that week. It is opulent, it is a magnificent palace, and I think everyone who's been there has always yearned to come back, to find an excuse to come back and spend more time at the palace. We offer courses during the week, and they are intended really for one major purpose: to give you a better sense of the history, the social priorities, the politics, and a little bit of the legal system of the place where you're going to be teaching. It's easier for you to explain your legal system if you know something about theirs. It's easier for you to respond to the questions of the students if you understand why they are asking such questions. We have faculty from the University of Salzburg. I lecture in the program as well. We always have one senior lawyer who's taught several times come back and spend that week with us to give us some practical information, the do's and don'ts of being a visiting professor. We have a social program for accompanying persons, and we encourage accompanying persons to not only be at the Schloss, not only participate in the social programs, but to attend the seminars. Because the fact of the matter is, if the visiting professor is accompanied to the teaching assignment, the accompanying person, he or she, will be just as much on stage as the professor. And that person, the accompanying person, can be a vital part of the visit. Now we come to some practical questions. Uh, where can I go? Well, you can go just about any place that you saw on the map. We obviously like to find out if people have any linguistic skills. It's not necessary you're teaching English. But if you have an ability in Russian, perhaps you'd like to go to Russia. If you have an uncle in the Czech Republic, maybe you'd like to go there. Or maybe you'd say, I have family in Warsaw. For God's sake, don't send me to Warsaw. But if we know these preferences, we attempt to comply with them to the extent possible. What can you teach? Well, what's your practice area? If you have an exotic practice area, maybe you can't teach that. A lot of times we have people come into the program and they simply teach Introduction to American Law. That works very well. I had a gentleman who wanted to come into the program a few years ago who wanted to teach entertainment law. But what made that even more difficult was he insisted on going to Kazakhstan. He would only go to Kazakhstan and he would only teach entertainment law. The fact of the matter was that there wasn't much of a market for an entertainment law class in Kazakhstan, so he didn't do the program. But people are interested in business law, corporate law, environmental law, human rights, uh, the American Constitution, criminal law, criminal procedure, intellectual property. The range is pretty wide. And I tell people, really, when you are on assignment, the teaching is just an excuse for being there. The students are in your class because they're curious about you as an American lawyer. We want you to be a good teacher, but the most important thing is that you make yourself available to the students and the local faculty so they get to know you. How long do you stay? Well, at least 2 weeks. You got to be there long enough to learn their names. We sometimes have people stay up to a semester, but most people stay 2 or 3 weeks. A few stay 4 weeks. That's really your decision. When do you do it? You can teach in the spring or the fall. The best time to teach is March and April and maybe the first week of May. If you teach any later into May, you get into examination time and students tend not to come to elective classes. In the fall, if you come in late September or October or November, maybe the first week of December, those are good time to teach as well. Where do you sleep? Every university has to provide lodging for you, but it will be smaller than you might hope. It will be simple. It has to be clean. It's functional. It's not the Four Seasons, but it works. It's the same lodging they give to visiting professors from other parts of Eastern Europe and the Soviet republics. I've taught often in those locations. There are probably not rooms I would want to stay in for 6 months, but for 2 or 3 weeks, it's quite comfortable. The orientation is always in the beginning of March, and as I've explained, it's an opportunity for you not only to learn something about where you're going, but also to learn something about the people who are also in the program. And I forgot to mention that we usually have 3 or 4 scholars from the host universities who spend a week with us in Salzburg. And they are a vital, vital asset for you. They have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with you. They attend the classes. They go out for a beer with you. And they are a fountain of information about their universities, their cities, and their countries. And what about your spouse and significant other? As I've said, we encourage spouses and significant others to participate. And in fact, we've set an extremely low participation rate so that you can be accompanied without it being too painful to that week in Salzburg. Finally, are your costs tax deductible? Yes, they are, because the assignment is made through our charity in Colorado, and thereby reasonable costs, including the orientation week, can be deducted from your income tax. Well, an important question is, do I need a visa? Now, in most of the countries that you would be attending, Americans can enter for 90 days without a visa. If you're going to stay for more than 90 days, then you have to contact your host university to ask if there are any visa issues. In Russia, no matter how long you stay, whether it's only a week or 2 weeks or 6 months, you need a visa. You have to have an invitation from your host university, and it will take a couple of months to get the invitation and have it processed by the Russian authorities in the United States. So if you're going to Russia, allow plenty of time to request a visa. Will your students speak English? They'll all have internet English. Some have sophisticated legal English. But most of them are in a class because they want to improve their legal English. And I've found that if you're willing to speak slowly, avoid idiom and slang, and don't talk about American baseball, if you're willing to sometimes rephrase something that you've said, they'll all get along fine with your ability to speak English. Can you use PowerPoint? Yes, you can, and it's encouraged at the minimum so that the students can see in writing some of the key terms that you are talking about. An examination? Most classes will require an examination, some not, but most do. Um, Typically you would have 12, 15, 20 students in a class, and a lot of times it's advisable to do an oral examination rather than written. The students are used to oral exams, and it saves you from having to be reading a lot of exam papers after the class. How many hours a week do you teach? Oh, typical would be 2 hours a day, could be 3 hours a day, but not more. So if you're there for 2 weeks, you might teach 20 hours. If you're there for 3 weeks, you might teach 30. But it's really up to you exactly how much you want to teach. Where can you find more information? Well, the very next slide will answer that question for us. You can get more information right here. There are two websites. The Senior Lawyers Net. You can find all of the forms you need for applying and confirming at that website. You can download them, or you can fill them out online and click submit, and it'll be sent by email to us. There's a video about the orientation location. There's a video interview, one of our past participants who's taught in 2 locations, and one of our lawyers who spent a good deal of time in Russia has filed a report on that. At the SILS.org site, with the SL subdirectory, you'll find lists of past participants, you'll find evaluation forms, you find course materials, presentations about the host universities, journals kept by participants and their accompanying persons, photos of their experiences. And this is where you need the user ID and the password to access this information. When you get on that website under SL, you can enter the ID and the password, and that will take you to all of this resource material, which will, especially once you've found out where you're going to go, you'll be able to find other people who've been there and find a lot of information about the place where you will be teaching. Well, that concludes our brief report on the Senior Lawyers Program. I would be pleased to welcome you to the program and to welcome you to Salzburg. The picture you see is the Salzach River, and behind the river is the old city, the fortress atop of the hill, and if you just walked over that hill or around it, just on the other side is the palace where we have our program for orientation. So I hope to see you in Salzburg. Please contact us if you would like some further information, and I'll be happy to talk with you. Thank you. Hello, my name is